So this whole place was avocados?
This was all avocado.
And then eventually you replaced them with lychees and mangoes and sapodillas?
So the spacing varies. It looks like most of them are about 20-foot in row and 25 feet between rows. We try to keep the mango trees down. They get trimmed right as quickly as possible after mango season. We tend to get a fair amount of water, and mangoes don't need a ton of water. Southern Blush is a variety that's always been very delicate, and our customers love it. The Glens and the Edwards, again, two really old varieties, but they just are really resistant to most everything that affects mangoes here. But typically, yes, our season does run at least a couple of weeks later.
How many mango trees would you say you have?
Between 3,500 and 4,000.
Wow, great. So tell us about the generations here. So your great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather started?
My grandfather came from Sweden to Minneapolis in the late 1800s, and he was interested in growing tropical fruit trees, so he decided to grow avocados.
Wow, wow. Hello everybody, welcome to Fruitful Trees. We today are going to take another field trip and go back to revisit a place we were at about a month ago, a lychee farm. They also have mangoes and avocados and sapodillas. It's called Erickson Farms. They've been there since 1919 and their third or fourth generation. And we're going to have a wonderful time talking to them today about their mangoes, how they got into growing mangoes and what mango varieties they're growing, and all about mangoes from one of the oldest existent big mango groves around. So this is going to be a great time. We're going to meet the family. We're going to talk to the generation of them that are growing mangoes. It's going to be wonderful. This is Erickson Farm. Their link is below. Keep in mind two things. They are a little later season than everyone else. So when everyone's running out of mangoes, they're still going to have some. So definitely check out the link below. And also, they are a big grove, but they are not a you-pick mango farm. So they'll have mangoes ready for you if you go there to buy some. They also ship in the mail, but you can't go there and pick mangoes. They're not a you-pick farm. But you can still go there, and from what I hear is during the season, people go there, and especially on a weekend, they sit there near the benches and they eat mangoes and they have a good time. So it's pretty cool. But you can pick up mangoes real quick. They're ready when they get there. They don't go out in the field when you're there waiting for them. They're already waiting for you when you get there. So this is a great place, great wisdom, great knowledge in this video, a great history. This is Erickson Farm. Here we go. Hello everybody, here we are. We're back at Erickson Farm. I was here during lychee season a couple of weeks ago, and that came and went, and here's mango season. And this is Kim, and Kim, so we're gonna talk about mangoes today.
Yes.
So as we're getting started, now this farm has been here since 1919, right?
1911 is when my grandparents moved here.
Wow, so it's, what, fourth generation?
I'm fourth generation, yeah, and my nephew's fifth.
Amazing. And there he is.
Yep.
How you doing? This is Dale. This is the third generation.
Yep.
And you're the fourth generation.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we've been looking at your mango trees here and everything else. And so what's your favorite fruit to grow? Is it mangoes, lychees, or whatever the season dictates?
Avocados.
Avocados. Yeah. Okay, we got to come back during avocado season.
This is one of the original avocado trees my dad planted in 1961. We had all avocados.
Wow, so the whole 60 acres were avocados, were they? Really?
Yes.
What kind of avocado tree is this?
That's a choquette.
A choquette.
And if you look at it, there's all kind of holes in it, and you can see all the way through it.
So this whole place was avocados?
This was all avocado.
And then eventually you replaced them with lychees and mangoes and sapodillas?
In 1978, they decided to see how much water that Lake Okeechobee would hold, and they put it up to 18.6 feet. That's about here on us right now. And that's before they had put a wall in the dike, and so this all didn't actually flood, but the water came to the surface. The avocados got phytophthora, and we lost them all.
Wow. Now there's, how many avocados acres do you have now, would you say?
About a half acre, because they all have to be up on higher elevation.
You still got a good amount of trees.
Right.
Okay, so with the international avocado market being so interesting these days, do your avocado sales?
Just local sales here.
Just local.
Whatever we can.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So we are in front of this big mango tree here. What's the first trees that were planted? Mango trees on this property?
we have a picture, old black and white picture, and my grandfather is just a little kid, and there's a mango tree in the picture. So you know it was one of the first ones that were planted. Some of the cypress trees are really old. But in terms of fruit trees, I think mangoes are the ones we have evidence of. This particular tree
is big. Wow.
Yeah, it's the oldest one that we have at this point. It survived in the 20s. There were 2 really bad hurricanes that came through, and they resulted in a lot of flooding. They're actually the ones that triggered the building the dike around the lake. And this particular tree was a little further out, and the elevation actually drops as you go away from the lake. So my great-grandfather didn't want it to drown, so he took a boat out, rowed out, and grabbed the top of it that was still sticking out of the water and yanked it up and brought it up here onto what we call the ridge, which is one of the higher areas around, and replanted it here. So we're not sure how old it was when it was relocated, but it's been here since, I'm not sure if that was the 26 or the 28 hurricane, but it's been here for close to 100 years now.
Wow. What kind of tree is it?
The rootstock in the base of the tree is Malgoba from India. And this lower branch is still that kind. They're kind of small and tend to grow in clusters. And then there's also was a Tommy Atkin was grafted onto it. So a lot of the taller part of the tree is Tommy Atkin.
Wow. Wow. Well, we are going to be looking at mangoes today, and you sell mangoes locally and you also ship mangoes.
Correct.
And you're talking about the Lake Okeechobee that's here. And last time you were discussing that normally fruit trees won't grow around the lake, but because of the spot you're in, this particular spot they grow.
Yeah, the tropical fruit trees pretty much all get damaged at freezing. And actually, the mangoes, the bloom will get damaged at 40. So they're very cold sensitive. The lake, because most of our cold fronts come across the lake, very rarely does one come the other direction. It heats up the air and keeps us much warmer than we would be at this latitude otherwise. So it gives us a little spot here. That lake effect lasts for about a mile. So there's a little spot here on this corner of the lake where farmers are really fortunate in the winter. Wow.
So I know a lot of the trees here are older, but do you have a lot of the newer Zill varieties as well?
We have a mix. We are constantly in an R&D cycle. We have been, at least for my lifetime. The varieties that do well here with our soil are not necessarily the ones that do well on the coast or in the sand. So we typically, when we get in new varieties, we'll grow a couple of trees, maybe anywhere from 1 to 5 of them, and see, do they produce consistently? How do they taste here? All that kind of good stuff. If they make that cut, we'll sell some to our customers. If we get positive feedback from that, then we plant more. So that first bit is usually anywhere from probably 3 to 5 years. Then when you plant the trees, you have about 2 years till you start to get a little bit of fruit, but it's really 8 years until they're in production. So it's a very, very slow process. We do have several of the newer varieties. Sorry about that. Some of them don't do well here. Lemon Zest is a great one. It just doesn't produce for us. The Orange Sherbet does. It did very well. The Crystal does. This year is not a great year for mangoes, so how they perform this year is probably not very representative. Because of our muck, the water in the soil is higher, so some of the mangoes are very sensitive to that. Our coconut creams, they just would turn to mush on the tree. Same thing with Valencia Pride is an older variety, very good variety. They split on the tree here.
So what kind of soil is it?
It's the black muck. Is most of what we have. Yeah, we
What
are in
area growing zone other than this area? Is there maybe California, the coast, inland Florida? Where is it equivalent to maybe?
This is the former Everglades, so pretty much all of the Canal Point, Pahokee, Bow Glade area is the black muck. I know there was a big pocket of it up on Michigan, and I'm really not positive where it is. I know there are pockets of it, but it's not very common, and it does, it oxidizes, it will evaporate. So that's why you see, grass helps keep it where it's at.
Sure. Now with the newer and older varieties, do you top work any of the older varieties, or do you just leave them where they're at and just plant new ones?
It mostly depends on the spacing. Obviously, if you can top work a tree over, then you're using the existing root structure, so you can switch it over faster than if you have to remove the older tree and plant a young one and let it grow. If the current spacing fits, then that is an option. But then it's also a lot of skilled manual labor that's got to be done. So it varies. We do both. And we have skips that need to be filled in, so those are always young trees.
How much land do you have, and how much of it is grown with mangoes?
We have about 60 acres total, and about 40 of that is planted in mangoes.
Wow, 40 acres of mangoes. Mm-hmm. So from the old time, in terms of spacing, what'd you plant that, and do you do the same thing now, or do you do it different now?
Most of the old, it's kind of fun because we didn't plant all of this. A small portion was a neighbor, and we have since bought that piece as well. Mm-hmm. So the spacing varies. In general, I actually looked at that this morning. It looks like most of them are about 20 foot in row and 25 feet between rows.
The old days, or
yeah,
okay,
and so that's most of the growth.
20 by 25. Okay.
Yeah, some of the newer varieties, my dad thinks might do better on a 30 by 30.
Oh, more spacing, not less.
Yeah, so creating that means taking out rows and moving irrigation and all kind of fun stuff. So for the most part, it's trying to figure out how to make that happen. That can be the other fun thing when you're doing the R&D cycles and trying to get the varieties together. We have a lot of, that one Tommy in the middle of the brook. And some of that just comes from a tree being mistagged.
Sure.
So trying to keep all the varieties straight is a lot of fun.
What does R&D stand for?
Oh, I'm sorry, just the research cycle. When you plant a few trees and see how they do.
Got
the
it.
ones that don't get taken out, now they're usually they're in a bit of an awkward space without their friends. So
now this tree is pretty tall. The other trees that are here, do you limit how you let them grow?
Absolutely. This tree we let grow. There's a big Hayden tree over there that for the most part we let grow. But otherwise, we try to keep the mango trees down. They get trimmed right as quickly as possible after mango season. As soon as we get the fruit off, we try to get the trimmer in as quickly as possible. Try to bring them back down to ideally around 15 feet. And they get topped and they get hedged. A couple different things. We like to keep them down where we can get to them to pick them. Keep them down to where when we spray, we get the full tree covered. And then you also want to keep them down to where on their spacing, they can still get plenty of sunlight and good airflow to help as much as possible naturally prevent and control disease. So that gets done every year. Our trees tend to grow pretty fast because there's a lot of nitrogen in our soil. And some of the varieties obviously have more vigor than others, and they'll put on more height over the year than others will.
Did you consider that when you got them and planted them, or you didn't know at that point?
We take it into consideration as much as possible. But as I said, when you're dealing with the grove structure and you have, some of these rows are still originals from the 60s. Some rows were replanted in the 80s, some, later. I think that one may have been as early as 2015. But it's not like you can just move one row over because then it's too close to the one on the other side. So some of it's working with what you've got.
So do you irrigate here, or you don't need to?
We have irrigation, but it's more for frost protection than for watering the trees. For the most part, they can use their roots to get to whatever water they need. And we're in Florida, we tend to get a fair amount of water, and mangoes don't need a ton of water. So the other thing real quick on the trimming and the timing is we like to get them down as small as possible before hurricane season, or as early in hurricane season as possible. We can't do it before, but that way if you get hit, you have less branches for the wind to catch.
Sure. Now you also mentioned spraying your trees. Do you get mango disease here, like bacterial black spot and other things?
Yes. We got mango bacterial black spot when Irma came through. It shared it with us. Mangoes in India, where most mangoes come from originally, they have mango season, and then the monsoon comes. In Florida, we have a lot more humidity, and mango season and our summer rains overlap. So dealing with it's basically fungal issues are one of the biggest challenges to growing mangoes in Florida.
Okay, so what are some things you spray, and is it your own type of schedule that you guys created, or do you follow some online thing or something?
Well, we consult with our mango expert in Florida is Dr. Jonathan Crean down at Trek with University of Florida. And we have some other experts. We also have a fair amount of experience here. So some of it's trial and error, especially when we get new diseases and new pests. Last year, agriculture in Florida got hit really hard by the chili thrip. And it wiped out fields of peppers. It came in from China. They're much smaller than the original thrip that we have here. So a lot of people didn't even see them because they weren't looking for something that tiny until they had done their damage. And on the mangoes, what they do is they will decimate new growth. They will decimate bloom. It just suck everything out of it. And then the little fruit, they get on it and they scar it all up. And in scarring it up, they often leave it open to, it then gives it a weakness for that bacterial black spot to get in there. And once that happens, the fruit's done. So last year we had a lot of damage from the chili thrip. This year we knew what to look for, and it's better able to control it. But it's like every year or two we get something new, and everybody's trying to figure out, does this work? Well, that's not working. Let's try this. And and then sometimes you find something that works really well, and then they build up a resistance to it. And all of a sudden it doesn't work at all. And so you have to start all over.
I know some of the older varieties like Kit and Kent are highly susceptible to bacterial black spot. Besides those, have you found in your experience here other of the newer varieties or other varieties in general that are highly susceptible to it?
Most everything is. Southern Blush is a variety that's always been very delicate. And our customers love it, and we grow it. It is extremely susceptible to it. There are very few that can really stand up to it. The Glens and the Edwards, again, two really old varieties, but they just are really resistant to most everything that affects mangoes here. In general, those are the two that do the best for us here.
What's your favorite tasting mango?
My favorite is actually the Southern Blush.
Okay.
But I like most of them.
Okay. Well, if you could show us around some of the trees and the rows.
Sure. Let's see. And I apologize for the grass. We had a lot of rain last week, and with our nitrogen, it is really growing.
Now, you have lychees, you have mangoes. I see a few mamey trees.
These are just for personal use, but yep.
Okay, and I know you grow sapodilla here.
Yep, and avocados.
And avocados.
So this is a Kent tree. And you can see the Kent had a pretty decent crop this year. We've got an early and a late bloom that's set, so we've got some that are much larger than others.
Now it's important to let people know that you're about a month behind the coast in terms of production. So even though you start a little later, but when they're out, you'll still have...
Typically, yes. The two factors that influence how quickly the mangoes mature are water, which is rain, so we can't control that, and heat, which again we can't control. So sometimes we'll catch up or come pretty close, but typically, yes, our season does run at least a couple of weeks later.
Wow, this is beautiful. Look at this, everybody. This is all mangoes straight down. Wow, that's beautiful. And you need to make the rows wider because you're gonna need to get machinery through here, correct?
All of our tractors will fit down these rows.
That's what I mean.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, you don't want them growing together for lots of reasons, including getting equipment down them.
Sure. Wow, this goes on and on. This is an amazing place here. And
let's see.
And how does your mango sales work? And you ship them in the mail by the box, or how does it work?
Yes, we do gift shipments, and they go by UPS. So anywhere UPS will deliver, except we cannot ship into California and Arizona because of the restrictions of those states. It's not us.
Now, you're not a U-Pick farm if people come here. Okay.
We're not. Insurance on U-Pick is a whole nother ball game. Okay. And a lot of people don't know, mangoes are in the cashew and poison ivy family, and a lot of people are sensitive to mangoes. But even if you can eat the mangoes and you can eat the peel, if you get the sap on your skin and it doesn't get washed off like super quick, most everybody will break out, and it's not pleasant. So
interesting. Now, another thing is, if you know when to pick the mango and you take it off, there should be no sap, correct?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of these get picked when they're mature, but they're not tree ripe. If you're picking them tree ripe, then there's very little sap, especially in the afternoon. In the morning time, it's always more sap than later in the day. And we also pick a lot of them green, but sometimes when they're mature, but they're still green, so they will ripen well off the tree, you'll still get sap. So
now, how do you know when to pick them not ripe on the tree? Does it go by each variety? Like, how do you learn that?
It does vary somewhat. This is the kit variety. The one thing that's consistent across all of the varieties is they basically fill out. So the kits stay a little bit more flat than most of them. I can probably show you better on the Tommy over there, but see how this one is pretty flat? It's starting to round out a little bit in the shoulders. The skin is still rough. This one is definitely still immature. This is a late variety, so most of them are. This one's getting closer. The skin's still rough, but you can see it's rounding out more. Let's peek at the Tommies over here, because they are the earlier variety, so you'll see more on them. And you can see it's one of the varieties that gets a pretty blush when it's exposed to the sun, so that purple will turn red when they get ripe. They taste exactly the same as this one, which is going to be yellow. It just didn't get the sunshine. So this one, you definitely got the shoulders are coming out. This one's still a little bit rough, so it's not there yet. They will get nice and smooth.
What about the stem? Can you tell anything about the stem when you pick them?
When you pick them, not that I'm aware of. However, if they're immature in a couple of days, it'll start to shrivel around the stem. So it's more of an indication afterwards. But when they're still on the tree, I can't tell anything from the stem. And a lot of times you're not even picking them where you can reach them. And a lot of our guys have been here a long time because they have to be able to tell if they're mature. And we do use the picker poles. So sometimes you're looking at a fruit that you can't touch, and you certainly can't see the stem on it from the ground.
Sure.
Being able to decide whether it can come down or not.
Sometimes they give white sap, sometimes clear sap, and sometimes no sap. So what does that mean? Anything?
I would say The no sap is definitely when they're ripe, and usually when they're so ripe that you barely touch them and they almost fall off in your hand. The clear is usually kind of in between, and then the white is when they're younger. Like I said, we also noticed that there's a lot more sap in the morning. Later in the day, in the heat of the day, it slows down.
Any reason or understanding do you know of that?
I assume it's a temperature thing, just like the stoma on the back of the leaves are open at night and in the morning. So when we're spraying nutrition, we do it full early. So we try to spray either early in the morning, or actually my dad sprays at night with lights, so that the trees can absorb it. And it's a heat thing. They close up so that they don't lose water during the day. So I guess the whole process probably slows down a bit.
Interesting. So,
it's a living thing.
Yeah, so speaking of the leaves, I know the skin is edible on the mango, but what about the leaves? Anything you could do with those that you know of other than making tea? I know some people make tea.
Some people make tea. A lot of, there's sap in the leaves and on the mangoes, so people who are, in the skin, so people who are allergic, I think should be careful of both. A lot of people can eat the fruit but can't peel them themselves, that sort of thing. With the leaves, I did talk to one person, and I can't even remember if it was a he or a she now, but I think they said they boiled it, and then like the first boiling they didn't use, but then after that it was okay in terms of having an allergic reaction. Supposedly, I think it helps with diabetes. I think they use
the tea or the actual
tea.
Leaves. Okay.
And I think they use the younger leaves for that, but that is not my area of expertise.
Okay, so let me ask you this about the skin. If somebody's not allergic to it and they eat the skin, great, but the skin's kind of rough. Now, if they're going to blend up the mango and they're not allergic to the skin, can they blend up the skin also, or do you know anything about that?
I don't, because to me the skin has a little bit different flavor because of the sap. And on some varieties, it's more than others. Some have a thick skin, some have a thin skin. So probably the thicker the skin, the more different you'll notice. I will tell you that if you're buying and drinking mango juice, there's skin in that. Like they just press those mangoes. So
they press them, but how? So if they're pressing the skin, they're not blending it in there. They're just pressing it. Then do they keep the skin in or get rid of it?
It would probably depend on the company. But a lot of times, I think even in some of the purees, they just throw it in. So it's not like there's any, other than it having some sap in it and some of it being, like I said, a little tougher than others. It's not like there's a toxin in it or anything.
Some people say all the nutrition's in there, the best nutrition part.
I have not heard that in mangoes. I've heard that in apples. I haven't seen any research that says that in mangoes.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Okay.
Yeah. So, okay, great. So show us around some of your other varieties, maybe.
Let's see. A lot of the specialty varieties did not produce this year. I'm trying to... Okay. Let's see if we can walk down here.
What's the most popular variety you have in terms of customer base?
Most popular, probably the Southern Blush. We've had it a long time. It's a mid-season fruit, so it's not ready yet. Well, nothing is, but it will be in the middle of the season. It's a big fruit, and it's a really pretty fruit. Most of our customers prefer the varieties that have very little fiber, so we call those our premium varieties.
You charge more for those?
Yes, and we do because they are harder to grow. They don't produce consistently. They're the ones that this year don't have anything, a lot of them. Others do.
There are a lot of bananas here, wow.
Yeah, these are, again, it's like our little garden. It's just kind of spread out about the
Are these different bananas? Because they're doing amazing.
I believe most of these are the Goldfinger variety.
Very nice.
And looks like this one's ready to come out. These are some of the younger trees. These are the Pickering variety.
And you say this is 30 feet by 25, you said?
No, it would be 20 feet between the trees, but it's in an old row, so should be 25 between the rows.
Okay.
It's one of those things where they average 20 feet. I tried to measure them. You'll have like they got planted by people. So it'll be 2018, 21.
Have you or the old neighbor that you bought their land have done any areas of the ultra high density?
No. I believe that would be challenging for us because of the soil. The amount of new growth since January is very high. It's like a lot of the fruit will get covered up in the leaves. So like I said, we trim every year and we bring them down. But with the ultra high density, you need to keep the trees even smaller. And I think our trees just grow too much in a year to like be able to get the equipment in between them. They would
Sure.
It would end up way too tight to be able to take care of them.
So these are all Pickering over here.
This whole row is mostly Pickering.
Wow.
We'll need to drive to check out some others.
Is there any mango that you grow that you personally don't like?
Yeah, I mean there are some that I don't care for. Some of them, to me, the flavor just isn't that interesting. Some of the ones that are super tangy, I don't like. I'm not a huge fan of the Angie. A lot of people love it. It just, I don't know, doesn't do much for me.
Now, what about your dad? Because he's been a lot of the old time trees, and now the new ones are coming out. Did he like change his mind from the old ones and say this one's better, or is he not as impressed with the newer varieties?
He does actually. The Pickering is now his favorite.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. My grandfather liked the Edwards the best, and it's hard to argue with. It's still a very good fruit. This is what the bacterial black spot does.
Oh, wow, yes.
Yeah, so that one's done.
What variety is that?
I'm not 100% positive.
And on that note, do you have a map of everything? Because I don't see labels on the trees.
We don't have labels on the trees. Because of the number of trees, we haven't come up with a good way to label them that either won't, you can't put something around the tree because, we don't have time to adjust it every year, and it would ring it. And like a stake or something that animals would just pull up and run off with. So my nephew could tell us pretty much every tree out here is. I'm better than most. He knows pretty much every tree.
How many mango trees would you say you have?
It varies, but it is between 3,500 and 4,000.
Wow.
We usually have about 50 varieties at any given time. The last list that I had 43. So some of the ones that we have more of that I'm more familiar with, I know for sure. Others are a little bit trickier. Some of them you can tell by the leaves. And some of us and some of our employees are better at that than others. Like I can pick out the Tommies, the Terralays, some of the ones that have unique things, but then there are others that are hard to tell.
And how does it work with seedlings here? Do you have many seedlings?
Yeah, we do our best to remove the seedlings in the fall, but they certainly come up.
I mean, do you have some seedlings that you let grow that are exclusive to the property?
Occasionally, there's not been one that, after 2 or 3 years, we decided was worth keeping or naming. Okay. But occasionally a volunteer will sneak by and get big enough to put on fruit, and it usually gets tried, and I think my nephew might have even named one of them, but to date they've all ended up not being kept.
So there's no Erickson mango yet?
No, that's not really our, that's a whole nother area of work.
Now, you have a lot of room here, open field. Mm-hmm. Do you leave it open for a reason? Do you plan on planting something else here? What's the plan?
This is one of the few places on the farm that is actually relatively open. There are avocado trees up there. When we have events, this becomes the parking area. For right now, I think we're planning on leaving it pretty much as is.
Now on the other side of the fence there, the other side of the highway is the lake with the dam, but there's a whole bunch of mango trees over there as well. Mm-hmm. Were those more recent plantings, or they've been there a long time? And
they've been there a long time, yeah.
Okay, so that's your land also?
Yeah,
And what are those over there? Are they just like the property, just various different ones?
They're mostly Tommies and kits. We have more Tommies than anything else. That was mostly what we had, back in, say, 1978. And it's the Tommies that we're switching over to the other things. There are still a lot of people that really like that variety. It's very pretty. It keeps us in business because they do tend to produce fairly consistently. This year, it's a very light crop, probably average only about a half a bushel a tree. But overall, if you have mango trees, that's the one that's going to put on fruit. So they do help kind of balance things out.
Now, being that it's not exactly on the property, but it is on the property, but it's across the street.
Right.
Do you have an issue with human people taking mangoes?
Yeah, theft is an issue. And it's not even an issue just over there. Like, we now have a fence all the way across the front and gates that we can close and stuff because people try to sneak in, like drive their vehicles right out in the grove and fill them up.
Wow, that's...
Yeah, they've come around the far end, like vans. And we've had a couple that get caught with grand theft because it was so many.
Wow. And what about animals? Do you have issues with raccoons or squirrels? How does that work here?
We have squirrels. We try to keep them under control as much as possible. We do have raccoons. They're tricky little buggers to catch. We have coyotes. And coyotes have a big range, so they come through. And when they harvest the sugarcane and cornfields around us, we tend to get an influx of wildcats. So, and then of course there's rabbits. But yeah, a little bit of everything.
Wow. What an amazing place here.
Let's see, this row.
This May tree looks great.
Yeah, it's happy.
Yeah, they're looking wonderful.
This is a different row. And I'm trying to figure out what all these are. This is a different one that got planted out of place. I know that. I think these might be terrelay.
Terrelay.
Because they have curly leaves.
That's not from Zill's program, is it?
I believe it is.
It is? Okay.
Yeah. I think this row is also has seacrest, orange sherbet. Not this row, but another one has crystal out at the back.
Now, was crystal under another name at one point?
They all start off with a number.
Yeah.
A letter and a number. In terms of an actual name, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Sure.
Like, we have an old variety. I don't know if you're familiar with it. They call it Winters now. It's a small fruit, no fiber. It's delicious. And it's an old one, but it just didn't become very popular. But we had several trees of it, and for years we called it the 20222 was its number. But it did finally get a name.
Great. So tell us about the generations here. So your great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather started...
My grandfather came from Sweden to Minneapolis in the late 1800s because of starvation and stuff in Europe. And he wanted to have an opportunity to own property. He was a lumberjack that learned to become a finished carpenter. And sometime in the early 1900s, when he had 3 children, his wife was pregnant with my father, he decided that Minneapolis was just as cold as Sweden, and he didn't know what he was doing, so he wanted to come south. So they boarded a train. My grandfather asked him, "How far south are we going?" And he says, "When the snow melts on the top of the train, we'll stop." And they pulled into Fort Myers. There was still snow on the top of the train that year, and that was the end of the line. So they spent 1910 in Fort Myers, and people who were developing this area came and sought him out. He was a carpenter, so they brought him to this location to build houses or schools, stores, boats, whatever. And it all started then. I mean, he built the Custard Apple Inn, which was the first hotel that they had in the area.
Wow.
When the area didn't really take off with a lot of houses, he started building fish boats because catfish, the people in New York were crazy about Lake Okeechobee catfish. So he started building catfish boats, and then he did some catfishing himself. And then eventually he planted amarilla flower bulbs for Montgomery Ward. And so that was his first venture in probably 1912, 1913 of farming this land. This was custard apple trees, the Annona glabra.
Really?
And their trees were 60, 70 feet high.
Wow.
And he and his oldest son, Carl, cut those trees down with a two-man saw. And,
wow. How did the
yeah.
custard apples do out here?
Well, we've got 12 foot of organic soil here, which is all custard apple muck, and it doesn't evaporate nearly as fast as the others have. In my lifetime, I've seen maybe 5 or 6 inches disappear. So that's not bad.
So they grew well out here.
It grew very well.
Do you still have any remaining custard apple trees?
I have one custard apple tree, but none of the originals.
Okay.
They cut them.
And the one do you have, is it a known variety or just something that's been here a long time?
Just one I got from Gary's Hill. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then your father took over, started growing trees.
My father, none of the kids had been to school. So my grandfather went to the county seat, which was Fort Lauderdale. We were part of Broward County at that time. And he said there's about 14, 15 kids out here that would like to go to school. How do we go about getting a teacher? And they said, if you'll build a 2-room house, he said, where the teacher can live and the other one would be school, we'll send a teacher out to you. And her name was Miss Snyder. And my dad was 4, and his other 3 siblings, of course, were much older, and they were starting school. And he would come to school and hang on the fence every morning until finally Miss Snyder said, come on in, Floyd, you can be part of the school too. So he started at 4, and he was born in 1910. I think he graduated from the University of Florida. He was the first in the family to ever go off to the university. He had to hitchhike to Jacksonville and then hitchhike back to Gainesville.
Wow.
They paid his way, and he became an agricultural teacher. But when he graduated, because of the war, there weren't any positions. So he had to start farming, and they grew eggplant and tomatoes, and then finally beans and sweet corn. And
at this time, it was avocados here, or they planted them?
He decided sugar became the talk of the town. Everybody was going to plant sugar, and he didn't want to go into the sugar development. He only had 26 acres. It was hardly enough to support a family. He also didn't have any control over when they harvested. So he decided he would. There was another farmer down in Pahokee, Hugo Boat, and he had about 40 acres of avocados, Choquette and Monroe, and some tonnage. And he was interested in growing tropical fruit trees, so he decided to grow avocados.
Wow, wow. And then
we grew them until they raised the lake in 78. The trees were dead by 81. He had seen mangoes in Miami-Dade County out in what they call the frog pond. People with waders on out picking mangoes, so he knew that mangoes would grow in a swamp. So he planted mangoes.
Chris only has a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
okay.
So
Okay.
So that continued until NAFTA came along in 95, which put us out of business until we discovered that people that live here will pay money for premium
Who put you out of
varieties of
business?
fruit. Pardon?
Who put you out of business?
NAFTA. We were growing wholesale for the markets in Chicago, Boston, and New York.
Okay.
And we were getting like $4 for a 12-pound flat. And the import mangoes were coming in at $3, $3.50.
So you started growing the mangoes, then you took over, and then it went down the road. And this is your family here? Your
That's my youngest daughter, Krista, and my grandson, Brendan.
Oh, so you're the last generation right now that's doing this.
Let's not say the last.
Not the last, the most current. Yes, the fifth generation.
Yes.
How old are you?
25.
25, okay. And you enjoy growing trees or fruit? That's amazing. Wonderful. Very good.
He's a great salesperson. Great salesperson. And so is Krista. And so is Ken.
Well, there's a generation here farm, and this is great. So may it continue and continue. And this, you got amazing crop. This place is really amazing, everybody. Get on out here, or at least order online some mangoes. And again, one of the great advantages to your farm is when everyone else is out, you should still have local mangoes because you're a little behind schedule.
In the springtime, when it's 75 and 80 degrees at night on the coast, it's still in the 50s and low 60s out here. So that puts us 2 to 3 weeks later.
Very nice.
Than the season.
Very nice. Well, thank you for taking the time to get on the video here, and we wish you the best success, continued success at this amazing place.
We thank you.
Okay. Being an old timer doing this, how well do you know the Zills? Do you know them somewhat?
They're awesome.
Yes, I knew those.
You knew their dad, Gary's dad?
Lawrence.
Lawrence, yeah.
When I was a little tight, my dad would take me over and we would take the back seat out of the car and he would fill it with 1 gallon cans of mango trees. They used to get the number 10 cans from the elementary school and put drain holes in them and fill them, and that was most of these trees all came.
Wow.
I think every mango tree out here has come from Zills. So.
Wow. Coconut cream you like?
Pardon?
Coconut cream?
It doesn't grow. It doesn't produce well here.
Okay.
It's a delicious mango, but it's the same thing. Most of the ones that they're grafting and creating do really great on sandy,
They
dry,
struggle out
like
here.
over in Boynton even.
Yeah.
Under soil.
Or down in South America.
Yeah.
We're the opposite. So we have to test here. And some of them totally flourish, and some of them
The Honeykiss is a great producer here.
Excellent mango.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, me personally, that'd be in my top 10. That's a wonderful late variety.
So far, I've only got one M4 tree.
Okay.
And it seems to be a tremendous producer.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
So it got stuck back in the nursery, and COVID came, and I got COVID pneumonia and cancer treatments, and so I haven't got them out into production yet. But I stuck a bud in a tree, and last year it had about 12 to 15 fruit. And even though I had it marked, my crew went along and they trimmed it down to nothing this year, and I still got 12 to 15 fruit.
Wow.
So, on one interior limb. So
wow.
I'm very excited about that as a future generation. So
that's great. M4. I mean, what about cotton candy? You do that out here?
It got stuck in the nursery and then never got planted anywhere. So
it's planted now, yeah.
We'll let you know next year.
Okay, okay. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you again for taking the time and sharing with us. And I'm going to put the link below, everybody, to their farm, how to order mangoes, how to contact them, and also a link to the previous video I did with them about their lychees. And thank you all very much for what you're doing.
You'll have to come back in chiku season.
Absolutely. And avocado. We definitely want to come back. How many varieties of avocados do you have still?
we'll start counting now.
Yeah, about 10 or 12.
Oh, wonderful.
I think it was more than that when we counted.
It's more.
It's, I think it's
We had all Choquette and tonnage at one time, and then once we lost them, we started planting like the Bernica and the Donny, the Marcus pumpkin. I mean, guys go crazy about them. So
Have you heard of a Kampong?
no, I haven't.
Oh, it's really wonderful winter variety. It's really excellent.
Like I said, since 2017, I haven't been able to get out much and get around in the. So I kind of stuck back in 2017. So.
Yes. Well, it's wonderful everything you're doing, and this place is still here in existence, and may it last a long time. And Man, come back here and make many more videos.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you again for your
Yep.
time, and thank you everybody. The link's below. Check it out. All right, everybody. That was another great field trip we took back to Erickson Farms. I look forward to getting back there during avocado season and talk to them about their avocados. So much wisdom in the history of these old timers that have been doing this for a long time, and just the fact that they're fourth and fifth generation and they keep going down the line. It's just wonderful to preserve that beautiful nature of growing fruit trees, and the history of it is something great for us to learn by. And like everywhere, they have to adapt to their situation because each area is a little bit different. Each climate's a little bit different. So they know their climate, what works best for them. Your climate might be a little bit different. So find something that's growing close to you to find out what might work best for you. But again, even then, 2 yards next to each other can have different results. So the best way to know is to plant yourself and to see what happens. Thank you to Kim and everyone at Erickson Farm for this video. And everybody, their link is below. Remember, they are a little later in their season than other places that sell mangoes. So when everyone else is out, contact them. They probably still have some mangoes. Put your comments and questions below, everybody. And if you know any place that you think might be cool for me to come out and feature on the channel, please let me know. My email's below. Until then, thank you for subscribing. Have a great day and keep growing. More educational videos about mangoes and other fruits and how to grow fruit trees. Please look out the other videos on this channel, Fruitful Trees, and also subscribe if you like, and also share these videos with others. Thank you for watching. Have a great day and keep growing.